At the same time, in the United States, in March 1933, a new president takes office, Franklin Delano Roosevelt. Roosevelt promises to overcome the economic crisis through an extensive government program, the New Deal. It is Roosevelt who will become one of the strongest adversaries of Hitler. However, in 1933, when he takes office, not Europe, but Asia is on his mind. At the inaugural parade, the troops are led by a general named Douglas MacArthur, Army Chief of Staff, seen here on horseback. The general joins the president on the grandstand. A few years later, MacArthur will fight the war against Japan. The confrontation in the Pacific is already impending.
And operationally, it is probably true that without ever stating it explicitly, the United States was in fact conducting a kind of balance of power policy in Asia. Now, the practical result of a balance of power policy in Asia was to attempt to preserve the integrity of China and to prevent Japanese expansion. Then the Japanese actions fitted better into the American concept of intolerable international behavior than the early Nazi actions. The early Nazi actions were primarily aimed at domestic minorities of German nationality and at undoing the effects or the consequences of the Treaty of Versailles. On the other hand, the Japanese actually invaded neighboring countries. They were therefore violating the concept of collective security as it was understood in the United States.
Japan has grown into a formidable military power. In World War I, Japan fought together with the Allies against Germany. It belongs to the victor nations. Now, it is striving to become the dominant power in Eastern Asia. Emperor Hirohito, a man who, godlike, enjoys the unqualified devotion of his subjects. In 1931, Japanese troops occupy all of Manchuria, a part of China. With the invasion of Manchuria, Japan is the first power to break the post-war peace settlement. China's leader, Marshal Chiang Kai-shek, attempts to mobilize Chinese resistance against Japan. But soon the Japanese troops continue their advance beyond Manchuria into northern China. Korea, occupied by Japan since 1905, serves as a bridgehead on the mainland. Now Manchuria is made a Japanese satellite state, and it is from here that the Japanese start to expand into China. In 1937, with a new thrust, they will reach Peking and Shanghai.
Now, the actual decision to oppose Japan developed only gradually under the impact of an additional Japanese advance into northern China from Manchuria, and the apparent attempt to dominate all of China, and this was compounded by extraordinary atrocities committed by the Japanese armies in China. All of this created a combination of feeling of indignation on moral grounds, and I suppose some recognition that a Japan dominating all of Asia and having a large sea power would be in time a threat to the United States.
Shanghai. There are European enclaves in Shanghai with American participation. Lying at anchor in the harbor is the American cruiser Augusta as a demonstration of America's power. But the Augusta has also come to evacuate American women and children. They are brought to safety. A Japanese attack on the city seems to be imminent. And it duly comes from the air. The Japanese Air Force drops its bombs indiscriminately on the civilian population. Pictures like these stir up public opinion both in the United States and in Europe. Japan, a member of the League of Nations, had turned against a fellow member, China, and the Japanese actions provoked the United States.
With Japan, it was theoretically possible to placate it by giving it a free hand in China and maybe in Southeast Asia. But this was so much against the American perceptions of the time, and for that matter, so much against American interests, to permit Japan to dominate China and all the rest of Asia, that resistance was inevitable.